How many platforms are you trying to show up on right now? Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube. Maybe you've got a blog that hasn't been updated in 3 months, or an email list that you feel guilty about because you haven't sent anything in weeks, a Facebook page that's just sitting there. Oh, and someone told you that Threads is the next big thing, so now you're wondering if you should be doing that too. Every time you open your phone or sit down to work, there's this little hum of anxiety in the background because you know you're not keeping up. You're not posting enough, you're not consistent enough, you're not doing enough to stay visible. Plus, of course, you're exhausted. You're spending all of this time trying to be everywhere, and still it doesn't feel like enough. You're scattered, you're burnt out, and you're starting to resent the very platforms that are supposed to be helping you grow. If that sounds familiar, then today's discussion is for you. I wish someone had told me this years ago, and most importantly, that I'd actually listened. You don't need to be everywhere. In fact, trying to be everywhere is probably one of the fastest routes to burnout and spinning all the plates unnecessarily because it's not actually moving your business forward. Today, we are going to talk about how to figure out which platforms actually deserve your time and energy and how to let go of the rest without feeling like you're missing out or disappearing completely. So if you're ready to simplify and focus and finally feel like your marketing efforts are actually working for you instead of draining you, then let's dive in. I'm Meg and I've built an engaged YouTube channel with over 55,000 subscribers, which has led to thousands of sales in my shop, a podcast I love, and most recently, my creative hub, an all-in-one dashboard I created to help artists and makers build the systems and structure they need to grow. Everything I teach here comes from what's actually worked in my own creative business. There's this idea floating around in the online business world that to be successful, you need to be present everywhere, all of the time, every platform, every day, showing up, posting, engaging, repurposing, batching, scheduling. And I get where this advice comes from. In theory, the more places you show up, the more chances you have of being discovered. More visibility equals more opportunities. But that advice doesn't take into account that you're human. You've got limited time, limited energy, and likely a whole life outside of your business, whether that's family, other work, health stuff, or just the very reasonable desire to sometimes not be creating content. And when you're trying to be everywhere, what actually happens is that you end up being nowhere properly. You're spreading yourself so thin that nothing you're actually doing is landing. Your Instagram posts are rushed, your emails are sporadic and half-hearted, your Pinterest posts are an afterthought, and your blog, well, it's been gathering dust for months because there's just no time left. You've probably had these moments where you convince yourself that you need to be on every platform. You feel like you should post on Instagram stories daily, keep up with reels, be on Pinterest, upload to YouTube, send weekly emails, maybe even throw in some TikToks, and you know what happens? Burnout. Complete and utter burnout. Because what you're doing isn't strategic, it's reactive. It's trying to keep up with this impossible standard of visibility that lives in your head, shaped by what you see other people doing. And these people might have completely different businesses to you, different goals, different resources, and in totally different seasons of life. They might have a whole team behind them. The myth of being present everywhere tells you that if you're not, you're falling behind. But the reality is, if you're trying to be everywhere, you're probably not showing up as your best self anywhere. You're exhausted, resentful, and your content suffers because you're just ticking boxes instead of genuinely connecting with your audience. So let's just take a breath and let that pressure go. You don't need to be everywhere. What you need is to figure out where you should be, the platforms that actually make sense for you and your business, your goals, your capacity, and show up there properly. Not everywhere, not all of the time, just where it matters. Before we get into how to choose which platforms to focus on, we need to start with the foundation, your business model, because where you should be showing up depends entirely on what you're selling and how people buy from you. This is something I see creative business owners skip all of the time. They jump into the, I need to post more on Instagram, or I should start a YouTube channel, without stopping to ask, does this platform support how my business works? So let's break this down. If you're selling physical products, things like prints, jewelry, ceramics, stationery, your customer journey probably looks something like this. Discovery, trust, purchase. People need to discover you first. They need to find your work, usually through visual platforms, because your products are visual. Then they need to build enough trust and connection to actually hit buy. And then they need an easy way to purchase. So for product-based businesses, platforms that support discovery and visual storytelling are really important. That might be Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, or TikTok. These are places where people are browsing, looking for inspiration, searching for gift ideas, or just scrolling and stumbling across something. But, and this is so important, discovery alone doesn't equal sales. Just because someone sees your product and thinks, oh, that's lovely, doesn't mean they're going to buy it. You also need to build trust. And that often happens through more personal, deeper content like behind the scenes, your process, your story, why you make what you make. That's where platforms like email marketing, YouTube, or even a blog come in, because these are the places where people spend more than 3 seconds with you. They're not just scrolling past, they're choosing to engage with your content in a deeper way. And that builds the kind of connection that leads to sales. Now, if you're a service-based business, maybe you're a brand designer, a web designer, a photographer, or a coach, your customer journey looks a bit different. It's less about impulse purchases and more about relationship building. People need to know you, trust you, and believe that you're the right person to help them before they're willing to invest, especially if you're charging premium prices. So for service-based businesses, you might care less about being on every visual platform and more about showing up in places where you can demonstrate your expertise and build relationship. Maybe that's LinkedIn, maybe it's a podcast, but with a focus on educational content. Maybe it's a blog or a YouTube channel where you're teaching and sharing your knowledge. And then there are digital product sellers, things like course creators, template designers, people selling ebooks or presets or guides. For you, the game is all about positioning yourself as the person with the solution. You need to be visible in places where your ideal customer is searching for answers. So that might be Pinterest, YouTube, SEO-driven blog content, anywhere people are actively looking for help with the problem that your product solves. Do you see how different these are? The platforms that make sense for a jewelry maker are not necessarily the same platforms that make sense for a web designer, for example. And yet we're all being told to do the same thing. Post daily on Instagram, grow your TikTok, be everywhere. That's why the first step in simplifying your marketing is getting really clear on your business model. How do people find you? What do they need to see or hear or experience before they trust you enough to buy? And then which platforms actually support that journey? Once you've got that clarity, choosing where to focus becomes much easier. All right, so now that you've got a sense of your business model and the kind of platforms that might support it, the next step is to look at what you're currently doing and ask yourself, honestly, is it working? And I don't just mean, yeah, I'm getting likes and comments. I mean, is this platform actually driving traffic, building trust, and making sales? Because those are the things that matter. Engagement is nice, but it's not the end goal. The end goal is building a business that supports you. So here is what I want you to do. And you can do this right after you finish listening. Pull up your analytics, look at your website traffic, check your email signups, look at where your sales are actually coming from. If you use something like Google Analytics or Shopify or whatever platform you're on, there's usually a section that shows you referral traffic, basically which platforms are sending people to your website. Have a look at that. Are people finding you through Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, a blog post, or are they typing in your URL directly because they already know about you? And then look at your sales. If you're tracking this properly, and if you're not, you probably should be, you should be able to see where your customers are coming from. Once you've got that information, you can start to see patterns. Maybe Instagram is driving a ton of traffic, but no one actually is buying. Or maybe Pinterest is sending a steady stream of people to your shop every single week, even though you're not spending much time on it. Maybe your email list is tiny, but every time you send something out, you make sales. And this is where the clarity comes from. You stop guessing what's working and you start knowing. But, and this is really important, I also want you to take this with a pinch of salt, because sometimes the platform that's driving the most sales isn't necessarily the best platform for you. It might be the one you've been putting the most effort into. And let me give you an example. Let's say Instagram is bringing you 80% of your traffic and sales, but you absolutely hate showing up there. It drains you, you resent it, you're constantly stressed about posting. Meanwhile, you've got an email list, but you haven't nurtured it at all. You send something out maybe once every 2 months, and it's usually just a quick, hey, here's what's new, kind of email. Now, based on your numbers, you might think, well, Instagram is clearly working, so I should just keep doing that. But is Instagram working because it's the best platform for your business? Or is it working because it's the only platform you've actually been consistent with? If you started putting real effort into your email list, if you started sending valuable, regular emails, building relationships, offering exclusive content or early access, would that start to outperform Instagram? Probably. And the same goes for other platforms. Maybe YouTube isn't driving much traffic right now, but that's probably because you've only uploaded 3 videos in the last 6 months. Or maybe Pinterest isn't doing anything for you, but you've never actually optimized your pins or used keywords properly. So yes, audit your current platforms and look at that data, but also ask yourself, am I comparing apples to apples here? Or am I looking at one platform I've been consistent with for 2 years and another platform I just dabble in occasionally? Because if you're going to make decisions about where to focus, you need to give things a fair shot. You can't write off email marketing because you sent 2 emails and didn't make any sales. That's not how it works. But equally, you don't need to keep forcing yourself to show up somewhere just because you think you should or because someone else is having success there. If you've been consistent on a platform for 6 months, you've been putting in genuine effort and it's still not moving the needle, it might be time to let it go. And that isn't failure, that's just being strategic. All right, so we've talked about auditing your platforms and figuring out what's actually working. But now I want to shift gears a little and talk about something that I think is absolutely critical if you want to build a sustainable creative business: owned channels. And what do I mean by own channels? I'm talking about the places where you have control. Your email list, your website, your blog, even a podcast, anything where you own the relationship with your audience and you're not at the mercy of an algorithm. Instagram, TikTok, these platforms are rented land. You don't own them. You're building on someone else's property and the rules can change at any time. And I'm not saying don't use these platforms. I use Instagram. They're brilliant for discovery, for reaching new people, for showing your work to a wider audience, but they can't be the only place you're showing up. Because if they are, your entire business is vulnerable. Think about it. How many times have you heard stories of people that wake up and find their Instagram account has been hacked? Or think how many times the algorithm's changed and has completely tanked everyone's reach overnight. It happens all the time. And if your whole business is built on one platform and that platform suddenly stops working for you, you're in trouble. That's why owned channels are so important. When someone's on your email list, you can reach them directly. You don't need to hope that the algorithm shows them your post. You don't need to worry about whether they're even online that day. You just need to send an email and it lands in their inbox. When someone finds your website through Google or Pinterest or wherever, and they have a great experience, they can bookmark it, they can keep coming back to it, they can buy from you again and again without ever needing to engage with your social media. This is the difference between building a business that's sustainable and building one that's constantly on shaky ground. Now, I know email marketing can feel intimidating if you've never done it before, or if you've tried it and it didn't work out. I get it, but honestly, if there's one thing I'd encourage you to prioritize in your business, it's building and nurturing an email list. Your email list is where you build real relationships, share your story, offer value, and make sales. And the beauty of email is that it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need fancy graphics or perfect copywriting. You just need to show up, be yourself, and give people a reason to stay subscribed. Same with a blog or a podcast. These are platforms where you own the content. You're not relying on Instagram to show your post to 10% of your followers. You're creating something that lives on your website, that can be found through search, that builds your authority and expertise over time. And the thing is, these own channels work in the background. A blog post you wrote a year ago can still be bringing people into your website today. And an old podcast episode can be discovered by someone new, and suddenly they're binging your whole back catalogue and feeling like they know you. That's the power of owned channels. They're not flashy, they don't give you that instant dopamine hit of likes and comments, but they build long-term sustainable growth in a way that algorithm-based platforms just can't. So if you're feeling burnt out from trying to keep up with every social media platform, here's my challenge to you. What if you spent less time on Instagram and more time building your email list? Or what if you took that energy you're pouring into TikTok and wrote a blog post that actually drives traffic to your shop? I'm not saying abandon social media completely, but I am saying make sure it's not the only thing you're doing, because the platforms you own are the ones that will actually sustain your business in the long run. Okay, so by now you're probably thinking, all right, I get it. I need to focus. I need to stop trying to be everywhere. But what if I go quiet on Instagram and everyone forgets about me? I get the fear, but simplifying your marketing doesn't mean disappearing. It just means being more intentional about where and how you show up. You could still post to Instagram once a week, but it doesn't need to be your main marketing strategy. There are some really practical strategies that can help you stay visible without burning out, and I'm going to walk you through a few of my favorites. Number one is repurposing content. This is one of the best time-saving strategies that you can use. The idea is super simple. You create one piece of content and then you adapt it for multiple platforms. So let's say you record a podcast episode, that is your main piece of content. But from that one episode, you can pull out quotes to share on Instagram. You can turn the transcript into a blog post. You can create Pinterest pins that link back to the episode. You can send an email to your list letting them know it's live. One piece of content across multiple formats, multiple touch points. And the beauty of this is that not everyone consumes content in the same way. Some people love podcasts, some people prefer reading, and some people are visual and want to see a graphic or a pin. So by repurposing, you're not just saving time, you're also reaching more people in the ways that they prefer to consume content. And repurposing doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to spend hours reformatting everything. Just think, what is the easiest way I can share this in a different place? For me, I use Canva to create carousels for my podcast episodes. I pull a quote or a key takeaway, pop it on my template and schedule it. Done. Takes me like 5 to 10 minutes per post. So I'm not spending hours on a platform that I'm just using to stay visible. Number two is batching. Batching is when you do similar tasks all at once rather than spreading them out throughout the week. So instead of trying to create content every single day, you set aside one afternoon and you batch. You create a week's worth of posts or a month's worth of emails or 4 YouTube videos. The reason this works so well is because it takes your brain time to get into creative mode. And if you're constantly switching tasks, a bit of content creation here, some admin there, a bit of product making somewhere in between, you're never fully focused. You're wasting energy by switching tasks. But when you batch, you get into the flow of what you're doing. You're in the zone and everything comes more easily. And then once it's done, you can schedule it all out and not think about it again for 2 weeks or more. Batching has been an absolute game changer for me, especially since having twins. I just don't have the capacity to show up every single day and create something new. But I can block out a few hours once a week, batch create my content, and then it's done. Then I can focus on the other parts of my business or just, live my life. Number 3 is a slow growth mindset. This one's less of a tactic and more of a mindset shift, but I think it's so important. We're constantly being told that we need to grow fast, scale quickly, hit big numbers, go viral, and if we're not seeing rapid growth, we're doing something wrong. But that's just not realistic for most of us. Slow growth is still growth, steady, consistent, sustainable growth where you're showing up in a way that feels good, building real relationships with your audience, making incremental progress every week. That is valuable. And often it's the businesses that grow slowly and steadily that actually last because they're built on a solid foundation, not just a viral moment. So if you're simplifying your marketing and focusing on fewer platforms, yes, your growth might be slower. You might not hit 10K followers in a couple of months. You might not go viral, but you'll likely build something more sustainable, more aligned, and how you actually want to run your business. And in the long run, that's what matters. When you slow down, when you're more intentional, when you're not rushing and scrambling and trying to do everything, things actually flow better. You make better decisions, you create better work, and ironically, you end up making more progress than you would if you're just spinning your wheels trying to keep up. So give yourself permission to grow slowly, to choose quality over quantity, to show up less often, but show up better. And number 4 is to let some things go and be okay with it. Finally, sometimes simplifying means accepting that you can't do everything, and that's okay. Maybe you've been trying to keep up with Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, email, and the blog, and you're exhausted. So maybe you step back from TikTok for a while, or you decide that Pinterest is going to be your main platform, and Instagram is something that you just do once a week when you've got the time. That shift is just being human and recognizing that your time and your energy aren't infinite. And the people who really care about you and your work, they'll still be there. They're not going to forget about you because you didn't post for a week. So give yourself permission to let some things go. Not forever necessarily, just for now, for this season. Because trying to do everything means you're not doing anything well. And you deserve to show up in a way that feels good, not just in a way that's keeping up with some impossible standard. Okay, so we've covered a lot today. We've talked about why you don't need to be everywhere, how your business model affects which platforms make sense, how to audit what's working, the importance of own channels, and how to simplify without disappearing. But I know there might still be a part of you that's thinking, okay, but how do I actually decide? How do I choose which platform to focus on? So I want to give you a really simple framework that you can use to make this decision. Question 1 is, where does my ideal customer hang out? This is your starting point. If you sell handmade jewelry and your ideal customer is someone who loves unique, artisan pieces and discovers new brands through Instagram or Pinterest, those are probably your platforms. If you're a business coach and your ideal clients are on LinkedIn because that's where they're thinking about professional development, that's where you need to be. You're not choosing platforms based on what you like or what everyone else is doing. You're choosing based on where your people are. Question 2 is, which platforms align with how I like to create content? So if you hate being on video, then TikTok and YouTube are probably going to be like torture to you. But if you love writing, then a blog post or email marketing might feel really natural. If you're visual and you love taking photos, Instagram or Pinterest could be a great fit. If you're more into long form, thoughtful content, then maybe a podcast or YouTube is your thing. You're way more likely to stay consistent on a platform that actually plays to your strengths and feels good to create for. Question 3 is, what platforms have I been consistent with and what were the results? Go back to that audit we talked about earlier, look at your data. Where have you actually put in consistent effort and what happened? If you've been showing up on Instagram 3 times a week for 6 months and it's driving traffic and driving sales, then great, keep doing that. If you've been sporadic with your email list, but every time you send something, people buy, that's a sign you should be investing more time there. Use your past experience to guide your future decisions. Question 4 is, what can I realistically maintain with my current capacity? And be honest with yourself here. How much time do you actually have for marketing each week? Not how much time you wish you had or how much time you think you should have. How much time do you realistically have right now in this season of your life? If it's 2 hours a week, that's fine, but that probably means you can't be on 5 platforms. You need to choose 1, maybe 2, and do them properly. If you've got more time, then great, you could spread out a little bit more, but don't overcommit, because overcommitting is how you end up burnt out and resentful. And question 5 is, am I prioritizing owned channels. Finally, make sure that whatever you're doing, you're not neglecting your email list, your website, your blog, the things you own. It's totally fine to use social media as a discovery tool, but you want to make sure that you're also building something that's yours, that's not dependent on an algorithm, that's going to sustain your business long term. So once you've worked through those 5 questions, you should have a much clearer picture of where to focus. And I encourage you to actually write it down. And I'll leave the questions in the description below so you can have a look back. Make a commitment to yourself. For the next 3 months, I am focusing on YouTube and email. That's it. I'm not worrying about Pinterest or TikTok or anything else. I'm just going to go all in on these 2 things and do them really, really well. Give yourself permission to simplify and then give it time to actually work. If today's topic has you nodding along and thinking, yes, I need to simplify, but where do I even start? Then I have got something that can help. Inside my Creative Hub, which is the all-in-one dashboard for creative business owners to grow and thrive online, I've pulled together all my favorite tools, trainings, and live dashboards to help you build a business that actually works for you, not the algorithm. Whether you're ready to start mapping out your marketing with more intention, finally sort your email strategy, or just want a place to land because business feels very noisy, then My Creative Hub is there for you. Just go to mycreativehub.io or check the link in the description. If you're ready to stop spinning your wheels and start focusing on what really moves the needle in your creative business, head to mycreativehub.io and find out how it can help you in your creative business. You don't have to do it all, you just need to do the right things for your business. And the Hub is a brilliant place to figure that out. And I shall see you next Tuesday.